you very much for being with us.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. It's a great pleasure to be with you, and I apologize for running in and out. I seem to be testifying and briefing many people here in Capitol Hill today, and it causes the ingoing and outgoing. Honorable Chairman, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and a privilege to appear before you this morning and to take advantage of the opportunity given me in our free society to speak my mind, to give voice to my opinions in a public forum in front of not only the leadership of our great country, but the press and the media, and through them all who might be listening around our country and around the world. I'm here to address the issue of a possible rating system in the recording industry, labeling records where excesses of explicit sex or graphic violence have occurred, and furthermore references to drugs and alcohol or the occult are included in the lyrics. These hearings have been called to determine whether or not the government should intervene to enforce this practice. Mr. Chairman, this would approach censorship. May I be very clear that I am strongly opposed to censorship of any kind in our society or anywhere else in the world. I've had in my experience 2 encounters with a sort of censorship. My song Rocky Mountain High was banned from many radio stations as a drug-related song. This was obviously done by people who had never seen or been to the Rocky Mountains and also had never experienced the elation, the celebration of life, or the joy in living that one feels when he observes something as wondrous as the Perseid meteor shower. On a moonless and cloudless night, when there are so many stars that you have a shadow from the starlight. And you're out camping with your friends, your best friends, and introducing them to one of nature's most spectacular light shows for the very first time. Obviously a clear case of misinterpretation. And Mr. Chairman, what assurance have I that any national panel to review my music would make any better judgment? To my knowledge, my movie, Oh God, was not banned in any theaters. However, some newspapers refused to print our advertisements, and some theaters refused to put the name of the film in the marquee. I don't believe that we were using the name of our Lord in vain. Quite the opposite, we were making a small effort to spread His message that we are here for each other and not against each other. Discipline and self-restraint, when practiced by an individual, a family, or a company, is an effective way to deal with this issue. The same thing when forced on a people by their government, or worse, by a self-appointed watchdog of public morals, is suppression and will not be tolerated in a democratic society. Mr. Chairman, the suppression of a people or of a society begins, in my mind, with the censorship of the written or spoken word. It was so in Nazi Germany. It is so in many places today where those in power are afraid of the consequences of an informed and educated people. In a mature and incredibly diverse society such as ours, the access to all perspectives of an issue becomes more and more important. Those things which in our experience are undesirable generally prove to be unfurthering and sooner or later become boring. That process cannot and should not be stifled. On the other hand, that which is denied becomes that which is most interesting. That which is that which is denied becomes that which is most desired, and that which is hidden becomes that which is most interesting. Consequently, a great deal of time and energy is spent trying to get at what is being kept from you. Our children, our people, our society, and the world cannot afford this waste. It was my pleasure to meet with radio programmers and broadcasters from all over the country this past week in Dallas. They expressed their concern about this issue and the direction in which it seemed to be going. They also expressed their willingness to practice the discipline and self-restraint that I mentioned earlier, especially when they were given direction by their listeners. Now, I believe this to be true because they're in business to please their listening audience. I would like to acknowledge the PMRC for bringing this issue to the attention of not only our industry, but our government and our people. It is obvious that we are dealing with a real problem which warrants our concern. I would like to point out, however, that we address ourselves not to the problem, but to the symptoms. I suggest that explicit lyrics and graphic videos are not so far removed from what is seen on television every day and night, whether it be in the soap operas or on the news. That we should point our finger at the recording industry while watching the general public at a nationally televised baseball game chant in unison, "The Blue Jays suck," is ludicrous. The problem, Mr. Chairman, in my opinion, has to do with our willingness as parents to take responsibility for the upbringing of our children, to pay attention to their interest, to respond to their needs, and to recognize that we as parents and as individuals have a greater influence on our children and on each other than anything else could possibly have. To quote a wise old man from ancient China, if there be righteousness, not self-righteousness, that's not part of the quote. If there be righteousness in the heart, there will be beauty in the character. If there be beauty in the character, there will be harmony in the home. If there be harmony in the home, there will be order in the nation. And if there be order in the nation, there will be peace in the world. I thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, if I may, add a couple of personal words. I'm a father of 2 children, both adopted. I have a lot of friends in the music business, other rock performers who have children also. And all of them, including myself, we have a great concern for our children. That's why I'm here today. In my experience, sir, all over the world, one of the most interesting things about the music that young people are listening to is it gives us, as adults, a very clear insight as to what is going on in their minds. We can know what they're thinking by listening to the music that they surround themselves with. The people that I've had the opportunity to talk with, the troubled children, the teenagers who are considering suicide, what they express to me is a real frustration in their lives, an inability to communicate with their parents, an inability to understand or to envision any kind of a possible future because of the nuclear threat that we live under. They don't see things getting better economically. They don't see things getting better for the small businessman, for the small farmer. They do not see a future for themselves. It is my opinion that it is out of this that some young people put a gun into their mouths and pull the trigger. We can turn this around, sir. We can address the reality of a problem and not deal with just the symptoms and create not only a better world for our children, but for ourselves and all of humanity. We can end hunger. We can rid the world of nuclear weapons. We can learn to live together as human beings on a planet that travels through the universe, living the example of peace and harmony among all people.
I haven't listened to too much of it, but it seems like the majority is otherwise. I think that the oral atmosphere developing in this particular hearing that the committee's on trial and make darn sure we don't do nothing ought to transmit rather back to the original problem. Filth, pornography, suicide, all this other stuff coming out of these records. Now, the other gentleman, Zappa, said, print the words. I rather like that. Since I wouldn't have to read it. He would read it one way, obviously, and I would read it differently. And there is that human error involved. Do you have any recommendation for the committee other than just do nothing? I mean, you've talked in beautiful terms. You're the best I've seen on peace and the family. I'm not speaking facetiously, and the family and the responsibility and the wonderful human nature, and I'm with you on the stars. We're both supporters of Cousteau, and I've authored in this particular committee the oceanography programs. Barring all of that, are you saying do nothing?
No, sir, I'm not saying do nothing, and that is exactly why I'm here and why I applaud this hearing and applaud what these ladies, what the PMRC has presented to us.
Well, I think we've got to be sensible about it, but there is, like you say, particularly with at least the radio and TV, I can't read the words coming there. I can see that difference between Mr. Zappa and myself. If persons of free volition can go in and read the language and see the words there, I wouldn't have to read it. But then, to not have some inhibition, some kind of discipline, as you describe it, within the broadcast media, then we've flunked the course, because there are 6 hours of that thing steaming and beaming into the homes.
Well, you know, Senator, excuse me if I'm interrupting.
No, sir, not. I'm trying to...
When I was raised, television was just coming out, and golly, it was an attractive medium, and I could sit there in front of that TV set and watch it all day. My parents had some restrictions on how much time I could watch television during the week, especially when I was going to school, and I could choose the programs that I wanted to watch. And I think that this is kind of an influence that we can exercise as parents on our children. Just because it's on 7 hours doesn't mean our kids are going to get to sit there and watch it that whole time. And we can give them a certain amount of time, and over here for me, one of the things that I'm fortunate with is my children and I live in a beautiful country, and we have a lot of activities which really call us outdoors, call us together and away from the boob tube. I don't watch very much television. And I think that we can exercise this kind of influence on our children, even in a city environment.
You and I are different. I mean, you and I are the same. I don't watch that much television, obviously, but the record is otherwise. They watch in television as much as instruction in the classroom in the public schools and more. All surveys show that, so it's being watched. So that's the fact. And living in the real world, where you and I would like to restrict our children, and me, my grandchildren now, it's a real problem. It's a real problem, and I guess you know from being a master at the art, the way you start off selling that record is get it accepted at some good programming, some good broadcasting, and then the sales follow. And you can't print those words ahead of time, so I'll know to cut the television off quick or whatever it is, unless that discipline develops, in other words, with the broadcast media. We are going to be forced somewhere with regulations through the FCC or otherwise. I don't think the American public is going to go along just with a nice hearing up in Washington today. I think there's going to have to be something more developed of some kind of discipline, as you indicate, and I'm trying to find out from you, how do you develop that discipline a little bit better than what has been developed?
Well, I think that a good beginning to addressing this real problem is this hearing that is taking place. What most concerns me, aside from potential legislation which might be enacted, which we have said which we've heard today is not going to be the case, is that the whole presentation made by the PMRC comes from, in my experience, a foundation of fear. The only thing we have to fear, as President Roosevelt said, is fear itself. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of what my children might see. I'm not afraid of anything that might be shown them or done in their presence that would lessen my influence on them or their opportunity to grow up and be fine, upstanding adults and perhaps someday serve in this very august body.
Well, most respectfully, President Roosevelt never heard these records.
Senator Gore.
I think the things that he heard were far worse, sir.
Senator Gore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to be able to ask some questions. I've been a fan for a long time, Mr. Denver, and not only of your music, but also of your contributions to efforts like Farm Aid at the present time, and also World Peace and your trips to the Soviet Union and elsewhere. Do you see the kind of trend in some rock music that is outlined by this presentation? Have you ever been to a Motley Crue concert, for example?
No, sir.
Do you agree that there does seem to be a growing trend in the, at least in the heavy metal area, that emphasizes explicit violence and sex and sadomasochism and the rest? You're aware of that music, aren't you?
Yes.
Why do you think that has been growing in popularity?
Again, sir, my experience, not only in this country but all over the world, is that music today is the medium which most specifically tells us what's going on in young people's minds. Not what's being put into them, but what reflects what they're interested in. I think that this addresses itself to a much graver problem, in fact, the source of the symptom that we're discussing here today.
Well, I mean, if a 10-year-old listens to a song glorifying rape, that's not reflecting what is in that 10-year-old's mind, is it?
I don't think so. I'm not sure that there are many 10-year-olds who know what rape is. Well, I'm not sure I would agree with that. If you have an explicit description of a suicide, for example, and a song that seems to glorify and promote suicide, that's not. I mean, young people are aware of that. Mr. Gore, Senator, excuse me for interrupting.
Sure.
If I could count the number of times that a mother or father has come up to me, or a child has come up to me and says, if I don't get your autograph, my mother's going to kill me. If I don't get your autograph, my daughter is going to kill me.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you see a difference.
this is a
don't
part
you?
of our language, and
Yeah.
and there might be a slight difference, but I don't think it's as big as you point out. You
Well,
know, the
if,
way this video that we watched here today, I think is probably a fantasy that every kid has about his father at some point in time. It may not be exactly those particular graphics. It may be out in the farm, being able to take your dad out and put a board to his fanny. But this goes on. This is a part of growing up, and our society has gotten increasingly complex. There are many more images to reach from. They all have an impact on a child's mind, and I'm saying that the small percentage of records that we're discussing here today, compared to the 125,000 songs that are released every year, is minuscule and is not going to affect our children to a degree that we need be fearful of. We need to be conscious of it, we must concern ourselves, and we need to communicate with our children and have them feel comfortable with communicating with us.
Well, let me come back to the question about suicide. Let's say you have a popular rock star who has a lot of fans, who sings a song that says suicide is the solution, and appears in fan magazines with a gun barrel pointed in his mouth, and promotes material that seems to glorify suicide. Here we have one of the highest rates of teen suicide of any country in the world. The rate has gone up 300% in the last decade among young people, while it's remained constant among adults. Do you think it's a responsible act for a record company to put out a song glorifying suicide, and for the artist to promote the album by putting a gun in his mouth in a suicidal, in a simulation of suicide?
I would not like to be the one to tell a record company or an artist what to do. I certainly think the picture that you describe is deplorable, and if I found that in my home, I would talk to my kids about it and get rid of it.
Could I just interrupt? It's my understanding that you have to leave. Is that correct? Or you're under strict
Senator, I
time
appreciate
constraints?
that. Yes, I have an appointment with NASA at noon, and if it's possible, I would like to go to that, but I also really appreciate being able to discuss this with you all, and I'm happy to stay if I can handle that.
Let me ask if are there any more questions?
Mr. Chairman, I will stop my questions at this point and wish Mr. Denver good luck in getting on the space shuttle.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that.
Senator Axon has a question, and I think Senator Pressler does.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for being here.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate your testimony. I don't know you, but although it may lead to the beginning of the end of your career, I like your music. In fact, I think I know you. I think a friend of yours, Rainbow Terrain, has talked about you. She's an art instructor and a friend of my wife's, and I kind of think I know her through you. Just one basic question. Please clarify for us, what is your opinion to the key question that's been asked time and time again here, and you've alluded to it. Are you for the printing of material on labels? Are you for or against, or are you for or against any kind of a rating as long as it's done voluntarily between the record companies and the producers? That's my key question, and I would simply say one more time, which I said every time I've had this microphone this morning. I think it's wrong to imply that although no bills have introduced, bills might not be introduced, and I want to hold that threat for what it's worth over the head of trying to accomplish some free enterprise volunteerism that most people have agreed to. What do you think about a free enterprise volunteerism getting together and either printing or coming up with a rating program of some kind that would be prominently displayed on records?
I'm opposed as an artist. I'm opposed to any kind of a rating system, voluntary or otherwise. Putting the lyrics on the sleeve of an album or on the jacket of an album is no problem for me. Again, I think it goes beyond reading the word, and I bring up again the song Rocky Mountain High. You know, some people, high is high, and high is getting stoned, and high is a feeling of elation, a celebration in life. As I told the people in the Soviet Union when I had the privilege of singing for them there, I sang Rocky Mountain High, and then I described what high meant to me, and then I said to them, that's how I feel having the privilege of singing for you. That is how I feel having the opportunity to participate in my government here today.
Thank you, Mr. Denver. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pressler?
Like I said, ties in with my question. Your basic line is that you're against any type of government action in this area, or indeed any voluntary labeling.
I would be, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
John, thank you very much. Thank you for your patience for waiting so long.
Thank you, Senator. Great privilege to be with you all.
Thank you.